Start.
Can you enable me to share my screen?
Yes. There you go.
You're also here, Harm? Awesome. Thanks.
Yes.
Awesome. I mean, I can go and you can like say something whenever you feel like.
Sure. Happy to jump in whenever there are questions, but I'll let you do the talk. Go ahead.
Cool. Let me get started then. Wait a second. Yeah, well, I guess you can see my screen fine, right, like that. So yeah, I mean, I'm just Louis invited us to give you like a little overview on what we are working on at BigCode. You've maybe seen the release. We officially launched like last week on Monday. It's a collaboration, but we've been like working on this for quite a while, mainly between ServiceNow and Hugging Face at the beginning, but now we've opened it up to like many other people. The main goal of the BigCode project is to build large language models for code and do this like in an open and responsible way. What we mean by that, like in detail, I can show a little bit later. Yeah, and essentially like last week we announced the project. So far we've had like a little bit over 200 people joining, which is very exciting from like various institutions. Also like some people from Carper, I believe, are now in our Slack channels, which is cool. And the core team on our side is essentially on Hugging Face side. It's me. I'm Leander van Vera. I'm like part of the open source team at Hugging Face. I've been working a little bit on code for a while, mainly on a project called CoParrot. Lubna started an internship at Hugging Face, and when she comes back in a week from her holidays, she's gonna join full time. And we're essentially like the two core members at Hugging Face working on BigCode. On the ServiceNow side, it's Harm, who's been leading most of the efforts, and Raymond and Dennis helping on the technical side. And I think Sean, who's also here, he's from ServiceNow, helping us with community outreach and so on. You want to say a word, Sean?
No, thanks for having me. Just happy to help, and look forward to collaborating and supporting the community and the team.
Cool. Yeah, you can see here, like last week when we kicked off, we were all in Amsterdam. That was on a boat in Amsterdam with like Harm and Dennis from ServiceNow, and me and Lubna as well, like a few other like Hugging Face folks that happened to be in Amsterdam at the time. To get started, we worked out like a legal framework to make it as easy as possible for like companies and institutions to contribute to BigCode. We want to make all code of the project available under Apache 2 license. The documentation will be under a Creative Commons license, and maybe most interesting is like machine learning models. We plan to follow the big science and also the Stable Diffusion releases with the open and responsible license that's been developed by a few people at Hugging Face and other institutions. That's on the one hand a pretty open license. You can share these models and you can use them for commercial applications, but the license restricts a bit like the use cases to make sure people are using these models for the good, essentially, and not to harm people or like institutions on. We're also working on a data set that we plan to release. One thing that I found like was a little bit frustrating so far in all the language model for code research is that people, although they started releasing the models, nobody so far has released like a big code data set. And we've been working for a while now to make one data set available. Hopefully, like within a week or two, there should be like the first version available. And I believe you plan to use that at Carver 2 to then start the training of some language models. So what are the kind of like tasks that we aim to tackle? The first thing, as I already mentioned, is like the data set. It's a GitHub data set. It should be like a few terabytes big. Once we release it, we filter it for permissive licenses. So the release is going to be a subset of GitHub with only the permissive licenses to make sure that training models and use them for commercial uses, and also just sharing the data set is easier. We also plan to work on redacting PII when it comes to training, and later on we also are thinking about opting out features. So if people don't want their repositories part of the training, that there is a mechanism how they can report, for example, their username or their repo name, such that we can exclude them from the training if they wish so. Then another like pretty big topic that we want to work on is evaluation. I think like evaluation is pretty underdeveloped when it comes to code. Like everybody's using human eval nowadays to evaluate language models for code, but I mean it only has like 160 samples, and if anybody would train like a GPT-3 model or like a Bloom model and evaluate it on like 160 IMDb samples, people would be like pretty upset about that. So I think it's important to like add more evaluations to these reports, and also think about other programming languages, like also these other benchmarks like APPS or MBBP. They're like heavily focused around Python, but like many use cases are not in Python, right? In Java or C or C++. So I think it's very important and interesting to work on benchmarks that extend a little bit the horizon of the capabilities of these language models. When it comes to training, we plan to train roughly a 15 billion parameter model. ServiceNow has like a GPU cluster that they offer to use for this project, and that should allow us to train at least such a model. We're also looking at other compute sources to run additional experiments. In terms of architecture, one thing that we want to focus a bit on is making sure these models are fit for production. So we're looking into ways into making the model faster. And one way we want to explore is like by exploring a little bit like multi-query attention. I think Palm and AlphaCode used multi-query attention to speed up generation of their language models, and we want to see if we can do the same thing. Also thinking about which embeddings might be the best one, if it's something like Alibi or Rotary embeddings, and also infilling is like something we're looking into. Then finally, as I said, like inference is something that we think is like pretty important. And so we want to investigate a little bit like how we can speed up these models for inference. So one thing, as I mentioned, that you can do is maybe think about how you can change the architecture to speed up inference. But there are also like many frameworks to speed up inference after training with various frameworks like ONNX or deep speed inference and things like that. And so we're planning to spend like a significant amount of effort investigating what can be done to make these models like really fast for generation. And that's pretty much it. To give you like an overview of what we were planning to do in the project. If some of you who haven't joined yet want to join, you can go to the link below. I think Lewis and a few others from Carver already joined. And we're essentially looking for engineers and researchers who are willing to spend a significant amount of time in the project. That said, we're also like collaborating with Lewis and you in general a little bit, like for example, the data set to make sure that you can use it as well. Anything you want to add, Harm? Or any questions?
I don't think I have much to add. So, but I guess we're ready to take any questions, if there are any.
Maybe Leandro, we do have the webinar Q&A AMA coming up. You might want to let folks know about that one.
Oh yeah, so tomorrow we're gonna have, is it tomorrow? Today's Wednesday, Thursday. Yeah, tomorrow we're gonna have the webinar where we want to onboard a little bit the people, these 20 people that joined, where we want to present a little bit in more detail, concretely, like what the action items are and how we want to run this project. So if you want to join the project, and then we see the invite to the Zoom webinar.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nathan?
I'm curious, for the model, after it's been trained, is there any ideas of sort of trying to like hosting it through Hugging Face and like actually making a like VS Code extension or something similar to Copilot to that people can use or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't like thought about that very concretely. It came up like quite early to think about like how can we demo it. So it may well be that we host the model like for a few months or so on the Hugging Face side or ServiceNow side to get people access to it, similar to how we did with Bloom. But like what the best form's gonna be for that is, I think, not so clear yet. For example, if we gonna make just a VS Code extension, depending on the performance of the model, it might be something cool, but it might also be like very hard to get people excited next to like the very polished Copilot API and user interface, right? That's getting there would be like, I think, a significant amount of work, just engineering work to make it like nice and user friendly. So I think we'll see when we get a little bit closer to the release what the best ways are to demo.
Leandro, there's a question in the chat. I don't know if you see that.
Oh yeah, I didn't. Good question. I don't know how we came up with 50 billion exactly. I think it was a rough estimation of what's easy to run on the ServiceNow cluster. I don't know, do you remember, Harm, how we came up exactly with 15 billion? I think it might also be.
Yeah, I mean, we were mostly coming from like, what can we run realistically, right? Like with the compute that we have available, like what's sort of like the reasonable model that we can train. So that's where we came to 15 billion. But I think like, honestly, I think these conversations around like what exactly we're gonna run are still ongoing. And like, I mean, this is like if you join the Slack right now and start these conversations and discussion, I think we're really pretty much open to, you know, changing our mind, like changing maybe ablation studies, maybe size of the models. Like it is just like a rough plan that we're just putting out there, and like we just welcome contributions and ideas here in this space.
Yeah, I think it's also quite likely that we're going to train a few intermediate models. So I don't think we're going to go from like a very small model to 15 billion. So there's probably going to be like maybe a 1 billion parameter model as well if we go for that size.
I think it might be interesting for folks on the call if they could share what they find interesting about BigCode as a project.
Sorry, can you repeat, Sean?
I think it'd be interesting if the folks on the call, if they were willing to share what they're finding interesting about BigCode as the project, and what their own interests might be in collaborating with us.
So I think a lot of folks at Carper are particularly interested in evaluation of code models. These current evaluation metrics don't actually evaluate for like what we need in Copilot-esque models. And beyond that, there's a very strong interest in data quality research and data governance research. So we have two teams that are particularly relevant to BigCode, one that focuses on data quality and the one that focuses on evaluation. And I think in that intersection, collaboration would be the most fruitful.
Cool.
Yeah, sounds good. To answer the question in the chat about like using other data sets, so I mean, we're not committed 100% to just using that GitHub code data set. That's just the one we're building right now and want to release. There's like some effort going on just mapping out all the different kinds of code resources that are there. There's like, if you go to the BigCode GitHub organization, there's an issue where we just try to map out what are the different resources, how large are they, and maybe at some point adding them to the hub so that we can easily use them. So I think adding more data might be definitely interesting.
Agreed. Let's see.
Any other questions for you?
So if there's still unsure on exactly what's going to be ran in terms of models trained, is there opportunity to sort of train other foundation sort of type models? So like BERT model for code, T5 model for code, some of the more recent ones that have come out. So that we're not using, because there are, BERT variants or T5 variants, but they're all trained on very small, like code search net. So it's very hard to build off of those. So I'm curious if that's a possibility for this project to go.
Yeah, so I mean, some people have also brought it up on our Slack. I think currently the plan is to flesh out a rough science plan in the next few weeks. We want to push out the model and then come up with that plan a little bit and then see how we can align a little bit these efforts around that. I think possibly we could train a few other models, but we also want to make sure that like the efforts are a little bit aligned towards like a common goal and not just like random experiments taking place. I don't know, maybe Harm wants to add to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is not the first time we got this question, right? Like, what about encoders, encoder decoder models? Like, I think we're interested. Definitely at some point, maybe there could be a working group specifically on encoder models or encoder decoder models. I think initially we were interested in some like an evaluation suite that could do few shot, zero shot evaluation. So that's why we want to at least have like some sort of like decoder style in there. Yeah, but I mean, it's also like if there's if there's a strong interest from a lot of people in an encoder model, I think that could definitely be part of the project.
With this idea of it kind of still being fleshed out and stuff, is there actually going to be like an end, or is this going to be just an ever-growing sort of project?
Well, So I take this. Well, so I mean, we're like, I think like Big Science, like if we actually sort of follow up on Big Science in some sense, and Big Science really had this cutoff of like, okay, we're doing it for 1 year and that's it. I like, for us, it's like we will try to do like in sort of like 6 months plans, or like 6 months like cycles that we iterate, and you know, as long as there's sort of like interest from all parties to investigate new things and try to explore, I think we'll just keep going. I mean, I think we have a lot of work ahead of us, like in text code models. So I think we'll be around for a little while, but you never know.
Yeah, I think maybe if you look at Big Science, like the way it was set up, there were maybe like 2 drawbacks to like the 1 year workshop idea. One was that 1 year is like pretty long. It's like there were a lot of people like excited for the first few months, and then I think there was kind of like the drought where they were like pushing out the data set and training the model where not that much happened, and a lot of people like disconnected a bit. And I think in that sense, like having 6 months kind of like projects is like or like milestones or phases, however you want to call it, is nice. And the other thing is that when it ended, then also a lot of people were sad and said like, I want to continue working on it. And like with that setup, we have that option to just continue and say, we want to do something for the next 6 months and come up with a new plan.
That is awesome.
Are there any other questions?
And
Okay. Well, it was very nice to have you, Leandro and Harm. And we're super excited to work with you guys. It'd be really fruitful. So, I mean, if anyone's interested in looking for BigCode, Leandro, do you want to paste the form in the chat?
yeah, sure. Give me 1 second. Here it is. Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
Okay. All right, everyone. Have a good day.
Yeah. Have a nice day, evening. Bye.